longest off-season in the football world is almost over. It's just 3 days until the A-League season 2022-23 kicks off, with Melbourne City and Western United repeating last year's grand final on Friday night. Season kickoff is everywhere too, with A-League getting around on billboards, buses, tram stops, and even Brekkie Central on Sunrise. A-League champions Western United will be hoping for a repeat of this year's a repeat of the result from that match over the A-League premiers Melbourne City. But what will actually happen this week, this month, and this season? Hello and welcome to More Than a Game. My name's Tommie C, and I'm here with Damo, Shanen, and Mikey. First of all, congrats to new dad Colby, who's going to be also throwing down some of his takes via pre-record, which will be in the podcast version as well. But tonight we're going to let you know what we think is going to be happening this season. Boys, it's great to have you all on the pod, live, talking football again. It's been a little while. We're not always doing weekly podcasts as advertised anymore for this season. But Damo, first of all, to you. I think the first time we've had you on since you became a dad for the second time as well. Congratulations to you as well.
Thank you.
How's the sleep patterns, mate?
Yeah, non-existent.
Well, look, we'll try and make sure that we keep you entertained suitably throughout the pod, mate. Shanen, great to have you on the pod as always, mate. You see you're rocking a Sydney FC kit there. It's not one we often see on the pod.
Yeah, I'm not a Sydney fan. I just thought since I'm reviewing Sydney, I'd wear it. Congratulations to Damo and Colby on having a couple of kids. And, if anyone's listening to this, just so you know, it sounds like if you come on More Than a Game, you're going to get laid. So, any journalists, any players who want to come on, the proof is there.
Oh, God.
We have at least two very virile men on this podcast.
Wow. Two of the podcasters have had sex. It's confirmed.
We're not just a bunch of virgins with terrible football takes. Mikey, last but not least, no, I wasn't going to say anything about virgins then. Last but not least, Mikey, how are you, mate? You've managed to blow off the pre-recorded work that we did on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah,
had 5 hours sleep on the plane. It's probably a flex, but mate, how are you this fine Tuesday evening?
Yeah, I'm well. I was a bit apprehensive about letting you know that I was available to record after Sunday night, dragging you from your bed to record my hot takes on the Mariners and Melbourne City. But yeah, glad to be here. Glad to be here live.
Mate, I hadn't even been to bed yet, so yeah. But,
for 2 days.
Yeah. Boys, just really excited to be talking A-League again. So look, let's get into it, shall we? So on this this season preview podcast, we're going to be talking about some high level things and themes across the league, sort of pre-season and heading into the season. We're going to give some sort of broad general predictions and some specific predictions as well. And then we're going to be doing, as always, our team by team previews and where we think they're all going to finish up. So first of all, I wanted to talk, I guess, about the marquee push that happened over the off season. The APL and the A-League sort of subtly or not so subtly put it out to the football world that they would be basically headhunting a whole bunch of off-contract players, and there was allegedly a list drawn up of about 30 players. Some of them pretty decent-sized fish in the football world. Some that would definitely put bums on seats. Sort of a bit of the caliber of Del Piero and Sturridge and those kinds of characters who we all believe would get bums on seats and get people through the turnstiles. Didn't really turn out that way. I mean, they got Nani, he's the big signing with Melbourne Victory, and Charlie Austin as well. I think he's going to be a great marquee for the Raw, but he's probably not quite in that caliber of player that was actually originally in that list of 32 or 30-odd players. Boys, I'm not sure if Joe Lolly counts, the ex-Forest player. I'm not even sure if he was signed as a marquee or not. For all we know, he could be under Sydney's cap, knowing Sydney. Boys, I wanted to know what your thoughts were about, I guess, how this all panned out from, I guess, the ambitious start with the massive list and sort of putting it out there to the football world that the A-League was going to try and get some big names to basically how it all panned out. Damo, you want to go first, mate?
Yeah, I don't think the strategy from the FA or the APL, whoever was behind it, in sort of putting out a couple of names as people that they had tried to talk to or wanted to talk to. Who knows if they had actually, or if that was just sort of the message to their agent to come and talk to us. I don't know if that's the way to do it. Talking to players on behalf of the league and then finding them a team after they've brokered a deal. I don't know if that's sort of the strategy we want as a league. We want clubs to sort of be doing it themselves. So, I mean, all in all, like you said, Tommie, Nani's great for the league. He's a huge name. Charlie Austin, he's going to be great in terms of his promotion for the league. He already has his social media presence, which you're all about. Tommie has been huge. Just as long as he doesn't put a Shanen in his hands, you'll be happy.
100%, mate. Mikey, there was one player who it looked like was quite close to actually joining the league and probably would have been as good, if not better, than Nani in terms of the name stakes. What did you think about Fabregas's near miss?
Oh, God, I nearly forgot about Fabregas to the Bulls. That was, I don't know why he decided a coastal Italian Riviera town might be a better place to be than Campbelltown. But look,
it just come from Monaco. Like, you think he would have been sick of it by now, but
look, where's a muddy paddock when I need one? That's like what he was thinking. Look, it would have been great to get Fabregas, obviously, but yeah, like you say, a whole idea of a league-wide kind of deal seems very odd. I think La Liga had that with the Saudi national team at one point before the World Cup. It rubs me up the wrong way. Especially if we want to get like a domestic transfer system going. I don't know how good it is to have a league doing deals on behalf of teams if we're going to implement anything like that in the future.
Fair enough. Shanen, did you see any positives in how it panned out?
Look, I don't want to sound negative, but I'm going to. If I could understand, right, if the A-League was pushing for such like top of the top names all the time, like Fabregas, Nani, all these sort of big name players, but when you find out that Sydney FC lost out to, I think, a second-tier Turkey side, a Lazar Markovic, who, no disrespect, he's not really a big name, it kind of makes you feel a little bit disappointed. You know what I mean? Because I understand not getting someone like Fabregas, but when we're not getting these sort of mid-level players who you could argue if they're even a marquee, it makes you feel a bit depressed. And Fabregas, I think the real reason why he didn't go to the Macarthur Bulls is because he saw the team sheet and he saw McGing there. He got all excited, hoping to play with his hero Liam McGing. But then he realised it was Jake McGing, so he told his agent, I don't want anything to do with it. Went to Italy, probably made the right choice.
Oh, very good. One player who I suspect the A-League still might have some hopes of signing is Luis Suarez, because he ended up going back to Uruguay. I think it was about 6 weeks ago, thereabouts. But the South American season wraps up at the end of the calendar year, so there's a chance that he could still come through in the second half of the season in January, which would that is the kind of level that sort of that Del Piero-esque name and stature in the game. And I think even Suarez at, what is he, 37 or something like that, given that he's such a great all-rounder, I think he would still probably just carve up the league in a similar way to how Del Piero did too. Boys, anything else on marquees?
Maybe not on marquees, but on potential more players coming in. There's a whole bunch of Australians on the fringe of the Socceroos who currently play in Asia, and Asia's leagues are all beginning to wrap up in the next sort of 2 months or so around the World Cup. So there's probably going to be a whole bunch of Aussies that have been hanging on to the last year of their contract in Asia as a push towards a World Cup spot, that might think, if I've made the World Cup, if I haven't, maybe it's time to go home. So we could see a whole host of people, and probably the one is is Mitch Duke, and I think Adam Taggart as well is off contract in a couple of months. So there's 2 number 9s that could join the A-League, as of probably December, which would be great for the league. So I think keep an eye out for some players like that. And I'm sure there's a couple of clubs that could desperately use a new number 9, and I'm sure we'll talk about it soon.
Boys, A-League Fantasy was launched on the 21st of September. It was the day after it was the day that I was very, very, very hungover after a wedding in Vietnam, and the group chat was blowing up till about lunchtime or probably even mid-afternoon before I saw the news. And needless to say, I'm very excited about A-League Fantasy. Are you guys excited about it though, Shanen?
I'm very excited to, put a lot of thought and care into it. Think real in depth about who I'm going to pick and, look at my scores and all that stuff and then forget about it after 2 weeks and realize at the end of the season, notice I'm lost. That's what usually happens with me. I get excited. I think this is going to be the year that I'm going to get real into A-League Fantasy, and then all of a sudden I just forget about it.
Fair enough. Mikey or Damo, you guys think you'll go the distance?
Probably not. I'll be honest, much the same. I go in with the best of intentions, but yeah, I'll forget a game week 3 or something, and then I'll go, oh no, I didn't sub off Tom Glover instantly, and now I'm screwed. The season's over.
I've got a renewed interest in fantasy football this year after a good start to the Premier League. So I will probably keep at it. It's something that distracts me from having a busy life.
So the A-League Fantasy, it's basically they've just ported over the I forget the name of the company. It's the one that hosts
Sports Track or something.
Sports Deck, that's the one. Sorry. So they've tracked over Sports Deck's website effectively straight over to Keep Up, which I guess it's a safe play. But look, it's in my opinion, it's not the ideal format. I think if they could have just copied essentially the simplicity of Fantasy Premier League, which I know is not everyone's cup of tea, with its simplified scoring and the like, I think that was the way to go. But I understand as well why Keep Up / APL would have gone down this path to keep things simple, keep the overheads low. That way they're not running their own bespoke website effectively. So from that perspective, I understand, but still, I guess a bit of a shame because I think with the slightly more complicated scoring system that they've gone for, I think it isn't necessarily quite an easy pathway into playing it. It's not going to necessarily get the casual fan involved and get them more interested in the A-League. I think it's something that appeals probably more to people that are already very invested in the A-League, unfortunately. So it may not necessarily achieve everything they want it to.
It's a good point, Tommie. And I think we have mentioned it before, but it was probably around the 2012, 2013 mark, maybe a little bit earlier, when Fox Sports introduced a fantasy A-League competition. And that really was sort of it was very, very simple. It was really easy to use. It engaged a whole new generation of A-League fans. And I'd probably put myself in the bucket of someone who became really invested in the A-League off the back of that fantasy competition that Fox Sports sort of brought together. So yeah, in saying that, you really want to be able to attract, it's another tool to attract people to the game and to keep interested in the game. And when it's as complicated of a platform as it can be for a fantasy competition, it really makes that difficult. So yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, that it's not an easy introduction to a fantasy league.
And I guess the other, I guess it's a bit of a minor criticism at this point, is that Keep Up has been a bit of an imperfect platform for pretty much since its launch. And I think Keep Up itself still needs a little bit of tweaking when it comes to the fantasy sort of mode or part of the website. It seems to be much better on desktop. And someone pointed out, I think it was at A-Leagues Beyond, formerly A-Leagues Villa, they pointed out that the website has actually changed a little bit in the last couple of weeks and that it's a lot easier to use, but I think that's mostly on desktop. I'm not sure if the app has been terribly updated, but look, I guess credit where credit's due. the APL are keeping working on Keep Up, the platform, and trying to improve it and get more content on there. And we'll talk, I guess, a little bit more about Keep Up itself in a little bit more detail shortly. But one final comment, I guess, on A-League Fantasy and tipping as well, which was also thrown out there, which I guess is a bit of an underappreciated and I guess has sort of gone under the radar a little bit with A-League Fantasy launching at the same time. So, of course, we're going to be running our own A-League Fantasy League and a tipping league as well. Look, unfortunately, we're not going to be running any cash prizes this year. To be honest, I just don't have the time to be collecting all of the all of the money and coming up with some admin for that. But look, I promise everyone that next season I shall run a cash league for A-League Fantasy and tipping as well, given that I expect I'll have a little bit more time up my sleeve next time around. But look, feel free to join. We'll be advertising our fantasy and tipping leagues. Feel free to join. It's going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully you can stay interested until the end of the season. Next thing up on our agenda was we wanted to talk, I guess, a little bit about the Perth Stadium situation. Now, Perth is, I guess, just one team that's had some stadium issues, but most recently they effectively, I think it's HBF Park. There's been some issues there where they're looking at doing some renovations, changing the curtains, all that kind of thing. And as a result, they were going to be homeless for quite a chunk of this upcoming season. Damo, I think you're a little bit more across this in some more detail than what I am. So I'm going to ask you if you can maybe sort of walk us through maybe what's happening and sort of where we're at right now.
Yeah, look, I think it all stems from obviously the regular stadium, HBF Park, I think it's called now, is being upgraded as part of the Women's World Cup. So they're doing some stadium upgrades there. And I think there was a lot of delays that happened because of supply chain issues around COVID and getting in and out of WA is sort of where this all stemmed from. So they're doing it now. They're going ahead with it. It needs to be done for the World Cup. They can't just leave it. And unfortunately for the Glory, completely out of their control, they can't play at the stadium. So I think the positive is that the West Australian government, who are helping fund the upgrade of the stadium, is sort of assisting Glory to pay all of the costs to move somewhere else. They're moving to, it's called Macedonia Park, which is an NPL side, NPL WA side, Stirling, Macedonia. So, and I actually read, interestingly enough, before the Glory existed, there was another Perth-based national, in the National League called the Perth Kangaroos, who played out of Macedonia Park. So it's hosted National League football before. The Perth Glory women's side plays out of that stadium for their games. But they're also going to bring in a whole bunch of temporary seating and temporary lighting and all this other stuff as well. So I saw a bit of a mock-up of it that it's going to look much like, do you remember when Wellington Phoenix played at Lower Mount Hutt and they had all the sort of temporary standing in and around the ground, sort of like, when you watch American sports and they've got the bleachers, the little wooden bleachers set up. So it's going to be stuff like that around the ground for people to sit on. So
they're going to be playing out of a baseball stadium. What?
Yeah, exactly. but I think without all of that temporary seating, the ground has about 500 covered seats and an official capacity of 5,000. But they're going to have 4,500 seats for Perth Glory games, which is good. But the only other thing is, because there's only 4,500 seats and they're playing 10 of their 13 home games at Macedonia Park this season, people who have season tickets aren't able to have a season ticket for the 10 games that aren't at HBF Park. So there's no guarantee of a ticket for any fan, because there's so few tickets. So it's first in, best dress for fans, which I guess on one side is they're probably going to expect to sell out every single game. And then on the other side, you might get people that don't want to go because they don't have a confirmed seat each week. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a stuff around, and I'll talk in my sort of preview of Perth Glory later how I think that's sort of going to affect their season playing out of that stadium.
Sorry, but if you're a Perth Glory member and you've been paying your member the past 3 years, if you paid your 23 membership and you've paid for the last 2, how many home games would you have seen? That's unbelievable that you don't get a seat.
And I actually think, Mikey, that Perth Glory have by far and away the most expensive season tickets of any club in the A-League.
That's pretty grim. And look, you mentioned, was it 5,000 seats, something like that?
4,500 seats capacity is what they're going to have this season.
I reckon they will struggle to get 4,500 people that want to see Perth stink up the place every week. And because I think Perth are going to be absolute trash this season. Just wanted to get that out there nice and early.
Agree.
All right. Moving on to one final thing. And I guess I've put this in the run sheet as media. And we're going to cover, I guess, a lot of ground here. First off, keep up. We kind of talked about that already a little bit. Boys, do you guys use Keep Up very often? Shanen?
I feel like as someone who's like a founding member of Kick 360, a competing organisation, I don't think I'd be able to really speak about Keep Up. So I'll just quickly say this: they're shithouse, and I'll let you boys do the rest.
Mikey?
Oh,
keeping it diplomatic, Shannon.
Someone from talkingcity.online. No. I don't, quite honestly, I don't know. Fantasy, sure, you go there, you go to Keep Up for your fantasy, but why else do I go to Keep Up? What am I getting at Keep Up that I don't get on Twitter? I genuinely don't know. That is a genuine question. Why do you go to Keep Up?
One of the things about Keep Up was that it was kind of, and we talked about this on the pod, I think, last year, about how it was basically meant to replace the World Game website, which sort of disappeared. But the problem was that the World Game had a whole bunch of sort of in-house writers, and Keep Up, I think, does. Like, they're producing some okay content sort of in the background. I just never, ever see anyone link to it or say, hey, did you see this? Like, here is some great content. So I think they're doing stuff. It's just generating zero buzz and interest. And I think once people start going there and start sharing, maybe it's because they're not sort of clickbaity enough. But once people start sort of sharing some of the content that's there, and it sort of starts to, maybe it's like all they need is like one buzz generating article or interview. And people are going to go, how good is this? I need to get on here more often.
Do you think that's because they have to toe a kind of official line, being like the official APL website? Or like, do they get more kind of creative? I don't know. I'm asking here.
Yeah, well, I guess like if you compare it to say like the Premier League website, right? And I've jumped on there a couple of times because like in preseason, for example, the Premier League website has a great breakdown of all the ins and outs for each team, right? And Keep Up have done something like that for the A-League, and that's been very handy for me, who obviously does an A-League podcast. But other than that, like every so often I might jump on there just to see what's there. But I can't remember the last time I read an article on there, which isn't great. Maybe, I don't know if it says more about me or the website or what, but anyway.
Well, I jokingly said when A-League Fantasy was announced, well, I guess I'll finally have to download the Keep Up app. And I did, and I used it for the first time to go on and look at my fantasy team and set that up. And, as exactly they intend you to do, I went to the app and there was a video that I was like, I might watch that. And it was a short 5-minute video of it was Roy O'Donovan and Simon Hill and someone else doing a preview on Perth Glory season. So, that's the sort of stuff that they're trying to get. And that's exactly another reason why they introduced, fantasy and tipping is people will use the app to do that. And while you're in the app, they try and keep you in the app by giving you content. So they just want you to spend as much time as possible on their app, and whatever way they can get you to do that is how they're going to do it. And fantasy and tipping is one of those. And I think people will use it a lot more often because of that. And I'll probably find myself as well going in and looking at my fantasy team or doing my tips. And then while I'm there, I'll look at the league table. I'll look at, there's an article that might interest me, and I'll click on it. And whereas I never would have gone to the app previously, I would have used a different app to look at the league table or a different app to look at articles.
So if nothing else, I think there is one thing that Keep Up can bring to sort of or can add this year, and that's keeping a record or sort of on the Thursday or the Friday before the round starts, announcing who the ins and outs are for the upcoming squads. It was something that used to get published sort of, I think, two years ago, and then the
Well, we
A-League
haven't
stopped doing
had
it.
weekend fixtures for 2 years. It's just been
Yeah.
all over the place. So there has been no real way to produce an article like that.
That is a very good point. But it was one thing that I saw Danny Townsend said would be coming back this year. So, I mean, Danny Townsend makes a lot of promises and says a lot of things will happen. So, look,
He does.
excuse
he
me
loves
if I
tweeting things and not doing things after, doesn't he?
shots fired. But look, I think it's such an easy piece of content to produce, that because if people are playing fantasy or doing tipping, they'll look at that, right? And it might only be a quick thing that you scan through maybe once a week, or maybe not even every week. But if you go looking for it, it's something that hopefully will be there. One final thing I want to say about Keep Up, and it's something that I'm not sure if it had always been there, but the ability to toggle whether betting odds are displayed or not within the app, I think, is a great thing. I think over the last couple of months, people have become, I guess, increasingly aware of the saturation of gambling advertising and stuff, and the fact that I know who they are, but I'm not going to say who they are. There's one betting company that's very heavily ingrained in Keep Up, and so I'm glad to see that there is a way of basically sort of trying to turn a lot of that advertising off. I'm a grown adult, but obviously there's going to be kids that are watching, that are possibly using Keep Up as well, and so it's great to know that like people can set that up so that their impressionable teenagers and stuff can not be saturated by gambling ads. All right, moving on to the TV deal now. I guess this info is a little bit old now, but it's worth revisiting or visiting for the first time. In that there was a change this year with the A-League men that's not going to be displayed on the main Channel 10 channel anymore. We're going to have 2 games per round on 10 bold though. And it also means the A-League women's are not going to be on free to air at all, or specifically on the channel. Is in the free-to-air channel. I think they're still going to be on 10 play though, once a week. So with that, and that means that all of the rest of the A-League men's and A-League women's games will be still available on Paramount Plus, and we'll come back to Paramount Plus in a second. But boys, how important do you think, whether it's 10 bold, whether it's Channel 10 regular, is to the success or otherwise of the A-League for this coming season? Mikey?
I just think it's funny how they spun it like it was really good news. Like, what's happened is we've lost our spot on the main channel, and we've got all the women's games on Channel 10's iView. Like, it's not great news. It certainly isn't like a stamp of approval of how Channel 10 feels we're going as a league. So I'm a bit kind of apprehensive about how that's going to go. But I guess 2 games on free-to-air TV, no matter what channel it is, may be a good thing, but I don't think it's a very good thing for the women's game. And look, I don't know how many people tune on to 10 bold. I don't know if many people put it on for the news and then they might catch an A-League game. I don't know what else is on 10 bold, to be honest, but I don't know if it's a good thing for us.
I tell you what, I struggle to get onto 10 bold because I'm just flat out 23 hours a day just watching 10 peach. So Damo, what are your thoughts? I think you've got some strong opinions on this one.
Not necessarily strong opinions. I think I agree with Mikey in that taking off the main channel is sort of more indicative of what, Channel 10, CBS, Paramount, whatever you want to call them, what they sort of value the league at now, considering what they paid for it. And how much they're willing to put behind a paywall, which they thought they were going to get, more money back out of the league. So, I think actually the whole of the A-League women's is moved entirely to 10 play for free. You can watch any game for free on 10 play. It's not behind a paywall at all anymore. So that's one thing there. They essentially are saying we don't value it enough that we think people will pay for it at all. And then you're also getting, 2 games a week on free-to-air is great. It's great for, people that don't have pay TV. But like Mikey said, if you're a casual, you're not just going to come across an A-League game on a Saturday night or a Friday night on 10 Bold. It's not going to be one of the channels you think, oh, let's scroll by that and see what's on. So it's a bit disappointing in that. I think there's still probably an opportunity for some of the big games this season to be on Channel 10. If you think Melbourne Derby, Sydney Derby, scheduling is fluid. There might not be anything on a Saturday night and they say, let's put that on the main channel, and that's easily transferable. So that probably will still be an opportunity through the season. But yeah, I agree with Mikey that this has been sold as though it's a good thing and there's X amount of hours of more free football for the consumer. But really it's just more an indicator of that, whoever owns the TV rights doesn't value them like they did 2 years ago when they signed the deal.
Boys, I watched one game of A-League at a pub last season, and it was after 6 weeks of hounding that particular venue to sign up for Paramount Plus because it cost them $8 a month to get it. And said it costs you basically 1 pint, and they'll make their money back. And I came in, I bought 2 pints and had dinner. So I probably paid for 3 months worth of sub for them.
And I think I came with you, so they paid for I paid for the whole season.
But boys, do you think there'll be more pubs and clubs or just more venues in general with Paramount Plus this season?
Well, I actually saw a Reddit thread the other day that listed the amount of pubs in Sydney alone that they know are showing the A-League this season, and I think the exhaustive list was 4 pubs, and 3 of them were like on the same street near Moore Park. So there's 3 pubs that they just use as pre-game pubs, and they were the only 3 that have got, we'll put the game on before the game they're all going to. So it's pretty grim when you look at it that way. But it's exactly what you said, Tommie. Pubs, clearly the same as the broadcaster. They don't value it enough to think that people will want to come in for that game.
It's always been the way. Like it's not even just a Paramount Plus thing, though. That does add a huge element to it. Like I remember Fox days, it was impossible to find a pub, and when you did, like I remember the Sporting Globe, that chain.
But at least
pub,
they had it available. Like they just wouldn't put it on for you. Yeah.
The Sporting Globe in particular, they used to advertise we have every game of the A-League live, and I remember twice 2 different bartenders were like, "Well, what's that?" It's like there's signs right there.
Yeah.
And then you add the point we have today where he's like, you have to ask if they have a streaming service that they have bought to watch your game of football. Like it's not going to happen.
It's now that they haven't heard of the streaming platform, let alone the league, right?
Yeah. What's that? What game's that? What channel's that on? Oh, we don't have that. Oh, we don't know what that product is.
Soccer. Don't know, man. Here's an AFL replay.
I guess the message to listeners is that get in touch with your local. A lot of them will have like a Facebook or a Twitter or both. And get in touch with them. Let them know how cheap it is. That, like I said, it's only a pint and or a meal sort of a month for one person. And I guess get down and support those venues as well. And while you're down there, if you think, oh, look, there's not that many people here and there isn't a major sporting event on, hound them to put it on, even if it's just sort of you that wants to watch it. Ultimately, venues listen to people who want to buy beer or food and actually watch it in their venue. So the more people pester venues, the more likely they are to get it on there, which is only a good thing because people inadvertently watch a lot of TV at a lot of venues, even just because they're just sort of lazily gazing around the room. Boys, moving on to Paramount Plus, is there any improvements that people have already noticed, maybe, or improvements that they would like to see in the product over the next couple of weeks as the A-League starts?
I think we're still looking at the same issue that we looked at the beginning of last season. Members who were promised discount codes haven't got discount codes, and we're 3 days out from the season beginning, and some people have been offered free subscriptions as part of their membership, other people discounted memberships, and no one really knows what's going on. So the clubs are pushing it back to the APL, the APL is pushing it back to the clubs, and it's all a big stuff around again. But I did see one thing that they have improved on is that there is actually now sort of an option as a fixture list, upcoming games, sort of like a TV guide of sorts you can use to see what's coming up on what days. I remember using it last year. You could only find it if there was a game live and it came up in your recommended stuff in the top sort of carousel, and you had to quickly time it right to click on it before it moved over to Heartbreak High or whatever that you don't want to watch.
Well, that sounds like a great feature. I wish I could see it. Where's my code? Seriously, it kicks off on Friday. Where's the code? Like, I want to either give you money or use the money from my membership for your service, and they're not giving it to me.
Look, I'm excited about the A-League, sure, but I'm absolutely gagging to watch the bridge. I mean, that's what I'm really hanging out for.
That's that show about like the leadership camps that you would go on to build a bridge together to get? You ever done those exercises?
Repeatedly, over and over again have I done that.
And they made a TV show out of these ridiculous like leadership camps.
That's the best description for a reality TV show I've heard. It's a leadership camp. Survivor like, right? All right. The next thing I wanted to talk about is, I guess, a little bit of content that's come out in the last couple of weeks. Ironically, I think one of them is on Paramount Plus, so none of us have seen it yet.
Wouldn't know, mate. Wouldn't know.
That one is the Sydney FC documentary. I think the first episode of that has already dropped, but like I said, none of us have seen that. I think we've only ever seen sort of the 30-second clips on social media. And the other one is Access All Areas, which is, or A-League Access All Areas, which not sure if it's a great acronym, but we'll roll with that. So is coming out on Keep Up, and I think on YouTube as well, which is an interesting play that it looks like Channel 10 weren't interested in putting it, or maybe weren't offered to put it onto, I guess, 10 Bold or 10 Peach or one of their many channels that they have. But look, it does look very, very promising, that Access All Areas documentary. I think that's going to be in sort of weekly snippets as well. So that's those two pieces of content are looking really good. They were launched at the same time as the season launch, and I'm really looking forward to watching those. I'm not sure if anyone's got anything else to add on those, but
yeah, it's a really good idea, and it helps like build a connection to some of the players in the leagues, and gives you kind of more of an incentive to get to know the people, build a kind of connection with a player or a club. And I think the more kind of behind the scenes type stuff we get, the better that'll be for us.
Would be better if they'd named it the A-League Secrets Show. It's a better acronym, isn't it?
A-League Secret Review episodes. Alrighty, now we're going to give some of our A-League season predictions. So these are some of our broader predictions about sort of who's going to be winning certain things, both individually and as teams, and of course the all-important your boys and favourite kits and bold predictions as well. So we're not going to not everyone is going to say all of their predictions. We'll leave that for our sort of website that we've built sort of slowly over the years, and really doesn't have much more on it other than our predictions. But, yeah, the thing you access once a year. Yeah, more than a keep up. No, it's but look, all right, Damo, who is your predictions for premiers and champions?
I am predicting Melbourne Victory to finish top of the league and win the premiership this season.
The double.
And I'm actually predicting Western United to win the grand final again.
Ooh. Wowie. Mikey, who are you predicting for your top three, so your Asian Champions League spots?
Well, yeah, I think it is going to be Victorian again. I think it is going to be Victory, City and Western. I don't know which spots, to be honest. I'll back my boys. I'll say Premier City, but yeah, I think it will be a tight one at the top.
Shanen, have you got anything drastically different to that?
I want to apologise to Dwight Yorke. I was very harsh on him when he got, announced as manager. I thought he was just announced for his name. He probably was, but he's turned out to be a decent man manager and a decent manager. And the Bulls have kind of, they've always had really good players. They've always been a decent side ever since they've been in the league. Oh, shit, they look like they're only in
like a bull in a china shop.
first or second. They look like they're not even close to their peak, and they're looking really dangerous. They got good defense, they got good keepers, and I'm honestly, the sky's the limit with where this side can go. And honestly, if Dwight Yorke can't get them into the top 2, I'll redact that apology. But I honestly think they're going to get top 2. They're one of the better sides. I think Western United, again, they're looking good. And look, I wouldn't be surprised to see kind of a smoky team get in there. Like, not saying it will be Wellington Phoenix, but like a few of these teams have recruited really well. And yeah, someone like a Phoenix or even maybe even a Wanderers could sneak in there and kind of surprise. I think it's going to be really close this year, is what I'm trying to say.
Shanen, I reckon you've named 3/4 of the teams in the A-League just then. and also, before we move on, Shanen, I do want to say one thing.
Yeah.
You said all of that gassing up the Bulls, and I was just reading some commentary on social media just before we jumped on, where someone very angrily was accusing you of being anti-Bulls. Is this true or is this false? Are you just hiding the fact that you're deep down secretly anti-Bulls?
You know what? Like, I will stick by my comments on Twitter. I was telling the truth. Some guy got really angry at me when I said Sydney FC and Wanderers were the 2 popular Sydney sides. I was making a bit of a joke, but you'd be lying if you're sitting here saying that the Bulls are popular. They have a small fan base that are pretty good. They go out and sing, but not many people care about the Bulls. So get angry all you want. I'm just speaking facts.
Mate, you just absolutely waved a red flag at that Bulls fan and he absolutely went nuts.
He's also a Manchester United fan, so the poor guy's been having a difficult week. So
deserves it.
He knew what he was doing.
Exactly. Boys, shout out who your wooden spoon candidate is.
Glory.
Yeah, it's hard to go past Perth Glory for me. I'll speak to that in my preview of them too.
Oof.
They'll be back at HBF Park to lift the spoon.
Shanen?
I'm probably going to be wrong, but Brisbane Roar looked very poor all pre-season. I can't look past them, to be honest.
I think that's a pretty decent shout. In fact, I think I agree with both of you that I think the Perth and Brisbane are going to be 11th and 12th. Don't know what order, but yeah, grim signs for both of those 2 teams, I think. Mikey, who's your player of the season or Johnny Warren medalist going to be?
I think Prijovic. I think he's going to kick on again. He's going to surprise us once more. Yeah. I think he showed enough last season that gives me enough confidence to back him. In terms of Johnny Warren, anyway, I don't know who's taking votes off him at the Woo.
Fair, not Troyesi.
No, I don't think so.
Boys, is anyone picking anyone other than Jamie McLaren for the Golden Boot?
Go on, say it.
Yeah, I think Mikkel Tadzi, he looked a better player last season than McLaren, and I don't mind McLaren. I'm a fan of McLaren, but Mikkel Tadzi looked a better player. If he has Renault Piscopo firing behind him, he could, get the Golden Boot, in my opinion.
No Daniel Penn, no party though. Sorry.
Nice.
Everyone else is picking Jamie McLaren to be Golden Boot.
Unless the cum dog really starts firing, I think it's probably Jamie's again.
Mate, I think the big problem with the cum dog is that he's going to be too tired from taking the Socceroos to the World Cup final in November. So I think it's too much to ask to be A-League Golden Boot winner and World Cup winner. So Anyway, Mikey, who's your pick for first manager to be sacked?
Okay, I'm going out on a limb here, and it really depends on results going my way. I'm going to say Steve Corica, you're gone mid-season, mate. I don't reckon they're going to do very well this season, and I don't reckon Sydney FC or their fans are going to stand for that. And I reckon halfway through the season, when they're sitting in 10th, they're going to let him go.
Interesting.
I agree, Mikey, you stole mine, and I was going to go with it's going to be the Sydney Derby in November that almost could bury Corica's job.
Wowee.
I reckon they could pull the pin on him that quickly. If it's not Corica, I think Warren Moon's days are numbered at Brisbane as well. I think the Warren Moon experiment with NPL players and the way he wants to play, no plan B, would have coming to a very, very sharp end. So I think I don't think he'll last the season. I think Brisbane might be a little bit more patient with him than Sydney will be with Corica, but I don't think Moon will last the season either.
Fair enough. All right, boys. We got two major ones left, and they are your boys and your bold predictions. So we'll go to each person and tell us who your boys are, followed by your bold prediction. Shanen, you want to go first?
One that most people might not really be familiar with, but Johnny Ewell I think he's my boy for this season.
He was my boy last
he's
season.
17.
Never
you must have
played.
cursed him because I don't think he played. But yeah, he's such a talented player. He's only 17. He's tearing it up for Adelaide's youth team. Chelsea wanted him. Why Adelaide aren't playing him, I don't know. But yeah, he's definitely my one that, yeah, he's my boy.
And your bold prediction?
My bold prediction is that Perth Glory's striker, who looked absolutely shithouse on paper, Ben Azubal, come from Israel's second tier. He's actually going to turn out to be decent because in preseason he's actually looked surprisingly good. So that's my bold prediction.
Perth Glory for top 6. You heard it there first from Shanen. Damo, who's your boys and your bold prediction?
My boy, everyone knows who my main boy is, and that's Craig Goodwin. He's my boy. And my other boy this season is Zach Duncan, who's returning to the A-League after a few years after leaving Brisbane. I was always a fan of him to stay at Brisbane. I don't know why they let him go. So I think it's going to be a bit of a breakout year for him in the A-League. And my bold prediction is that Adelaide United will make the grand final.
Wowee, that is bold. That's big. Damo, you're always good for some check the tapes fodder come season review pod. So looking forward. I went
tame this year. I mean, last season I said that Dimi Petratos was going to win the Johnny Warren Medal and play for the Socceroos. So.
What a great!
I don't know why I just buried myself again by saying that.
What could have been?
Oh shit. Mikey, who are your boys and your bold prediction?
I like a character. I like a player with good character. I don't think I can claim the cum dog, but I will claim City's new boy, Valon Berisha. Everything I've seen from him on social so far seems like he's a really good player, and he's got a really good personality on him too. So keep an eye on him.
And just seeing the name Berisha on the back of a City top is going to be great.
Yeah, I think sales will be slow to begin with, but they may pick up.
Mikey, I just really appreciate that it's not just all about the physical attributes for you. His personality matters too.
Yeah, that's what's most important.
All right, and for me, for just good account keeping, my boys are Tenkwal. So that's the middle brother between Garing and Alu Kual. He's I think 19. He's already at the Mariners. I'm expecting him to blow up once Garing leaves, and then there'll be a space for a Kual to just light up the A-League once more. I'm going big on Kraev, the Bulgarian who signed for Wellington. And finally, I just really want the comeback arc for Arzani. I think, look, whether you like him or don't like him, I just hope that he plays well, just because it's just been really shit seeing another talented young Australian get a bad injury and then just sort of fade into obscurity. So I don't care about the World Cup. I just want him to have a good season for him, and so that he can sort of, I guess, get on with the rest of his career, I guess.
Just quickly on Arzani before we move on, and I'm sure someone's got a note about him, whoever's previewing MacArthur, but I don't understand why Arzani cops so much heat and hate from the football community here. He's a kid that was very talented. He played really well. He maybe went too early to go overseas. He had some injury problems. He's come back to try and reignite his career. He's done nothing wrong. He's done everything he thought was the right thing to do. And people almost are trying to vilify him like he was our next big thing and failed. He's 23 years old.
Still has an opportunity to still have a very, very strong career, not necessarily just in the A-League, but overseas as well. So, looking forward to that. Hopefully he stays fit above all else and just gets plenty of minutes this year. My bold prediction is that I wrote down a few, but I'm only going to name one. I'm just going to say that I think the Wanderers and the Jets are going to go big this year. I think they're going to finish 3rd and 4th respectively, which I don't know if that's actually that bolder prediction or not. But I guess we'll see once we get to some of the Jets and Wanderers previews later anyway. All right, that wraps up our sort of broad predictions. Now we're going to do our A-League team previews. Obviously, there's the 4 of us. For those tuning in for the live stream, you'll notice that the 5th member, Colby's not on the live stream. For the podcast version, we'll have his previews on that, though. So first up, though, is Damo with Adelaide. Go on, mate.
Yeah, look, you heard my bold prediction before that Adelaide will make a grand final. I'm pretty hype on Adelaide. They obviously finished 4th last season. They came storming home towards the back end. I think they won 5 games in a row. Unfortunately, lost in a semi-final for the 2nd year in a row. But I think they've only strengthened their team. One interesting thing I saw from doing a little bit of reading about Adelaide, and I had forgotten a lot that happened last season, but they scored a lot of goals late to win points. And I think the statistic was that they scored more goals in the final 15 minutes than any other team in the competition, and the vast majority of those goals were to either gain points, either get a draw or gain 2 points to take the lead. So, they've really shown that they've got something towards the back end of games. They keep going, they keep digging in. So I think that'll really sort of help them this season. I think the other side of that is they started a lot of games really slow last season, and I think they need to change that. They need to get on the front foot early, and that's probably something that they'll be looking at doing. I think Adelaide fans are, in my opinion, going to be talking about a title race. I think Adelaide will finish. I've predicted them to finish 3rd, and I don't think they'll be too far off the top. I think they've strengthened already one of the strongest defenses in the league from last season. I think they conceded the only team to concede fewer goals than Adelaide United was Melbourne Victory. So a very strong defense, and they brought in Van der Sarg and Warland to strengthen that defense even more. So a lot of options there, obviously alongside Alex Popovich, who had a breakout season last year and has been outstanding. He'll look to go to the next level this year. Another big in is Ben Halloran's back for them after leaving early last season for a little bit of a failed adventure to Seoul, I think it was, and then he came back. But I think the biggest in for Adelaide has got to be Craig Goodwin now being a full Adelaide player. He's not on loan from his club. He, reports suggest that he begged his club to release him, mutual termination, didn't want anything from them, so he could sign a long-term contract at Adelaide United. And I think he signed for 4 years at Adelaide United, so I don't think there's any prospect of him going anywhere soon. He's got a young family. He's from Adelaide. I think he's 31 years old this year. I don't see Craig Goodwin really going anywhere else after this. So I think that's probably one huge thing for Adelaide United is he can sort of be the pin of their team moving forward for the next few years. Big outs has got to be the young three guys that jet off in the off season was Mo Toure, Cassini Yengi and Dukuli all left the club. So I'm sure Carl Viet would have wanted to keep the three of them around. All great young talent, but as we've seen over the last few years, Adelaide just keeps churning out this conveyor belt of very good players. So obviously they've got Nestori Irankunda there. He's still only 17 years old. He's going to get more game time this year. And look, like Shanen said before, Johnny Yill's there. I don't think he's turned 18 yet. There's probably another 3 or 4 players that we don't even know about that will start playing this season from their youth team. I think I said they'd be excited about what I said before, strengthening their backline. But what they're going to be nervous about is having to rely on wingers and midfielders for the bulk of their goals. They don't really have a really shining star as a number 9. They've got Ibusuki and they've got Blackwood, and neither of those guys you're going to be able to rely on week in, week out to score goals. So when I said earlier about some Australians who will be looking to come back to the A-League, I think Adelaide, who will start the season well, will be really looking for one of these Aussie number 9s to come in and just make that team even better. So look out for a Mitch Duker and Adam Taggart to come to Adelaide mid-season. I think will really push them towards a title tilt. So I think, on one hand, they're nervous about that, but on the other hand, there's an opportunity to sign a really good number 9 to fill that gap. I've got here as one to watch is Bernardo. Obviously his dad, Cassio, is a legend of the club. Bernardo, I learnt yesterday, unfortunately, had surgery a couple of days ago, and he's going to miss the first 3 months of the season. So that's a big out after, showing a lot of promise last year. I think he's still only 18 years old as well. So, like I said, another one of those young players that's just coming through, and he's in the final year of his contract. So I thought he really had something to play for this season. Hopefully we can see more of him towards the back end of the year and this injury doesn't slow him down too much. A successful season for Adelaide for me is hosting a home final. I think they really need to, like I said before, they've lost 2 semi-finals in a row. And I think hosting a home final at the newly renovated Highmarsh Stadium could really be the difference in getting to a grand final this year. And I think if they host a semi-final, they'll go through to a grand final. So I predicted them to finish 3rd, and it's going to be a good season for Adelaide. So I'm pretty high on them as a team, which is I previewed them last year, and I had a very different sort of opinion of Adelaide, and Carl Viet really proved me wrong. And I said that I didn't think he had much to him as a manager, and credit to him, he's done really well with the squad, and particularly the young players in the squad. We'll talk about Adelaide's kits. Again, they've smashed it out of the park. I think they've absolutely killed the home kit and the away kit. I think they're both brilliant. I'm going to give them a 10 out of 10 Chinese Nike ticks.
Very good. All right. Next up is going to be Colby. Now, Colby's going to send us through some audio for his teams, and that means that next up is Mikey with the Mariners. Go on. You're on mute, mate.
Apologies all. Sorry about that. Well, look, the Mariners, if you're a Mariners fan, I think you'd be a bit of a fool to not be optimistic about the season coming up. I think everything we saw from them last season, how they proved kind of everyone wrong, I think that's gonna serve them well coming into this season. They've got Monty's second season, his first second season. He's got a full season to go. We have a lot of outs for the Mariners, but I think there's. Sorry, I'm hearing myself back. Is that anyone else? Sorry.
I think it's Shanen.
Oh, my bad.
Keep going, mate.
Okay, so we have Mark Burugidi out. That's a huge one for the Mariners. But we do have Danny Vukovic coming in, which I think is going to be a huge boon for them. We've also got Aquilina coming in and Marco Tullio, not to be confused with Marco Tilio. And I don't think he will be confused for Marco Tilio, I'm afraid. I saw some of his highlights. I wasn't very inspired, but I think he'll probably be a good addition to them. I don't know if anyone knows more about the exploits of Marco Tilio. Again, we lost Kai Rouse, Marco Ionia, Kai Goddard, Kuhl, Tonic, and Bazanik. But I think Monty, being the ex-youth coach, he's brought in at least 5 people from the youth academy, and I think he'll know how to play them pretty well. And I think the Mariners will have a finals run this season. The kits. Home kit, very nice design. The away kit with the white in the middle, like the reverse Ajax kit, I'm not very convinced on. The third kit, which I'm pretty sure is the Melbourne Victory home kit, again, I'm not very convinced with. But look, the Mariners have shown us in pre-season that they're ready to take it to everyone. They've beaten City twice. They've beaten Victory. They've beaten the Wanderers. Their only losses have come from Sydney on penalties in the Cup and from Western United in a friendly. So I think Mariners fans, you have a lot to be excited for this coming season. You had a big squad overhaul. It'll take time, but I think they'll gel. One to watch, I've had Max Ballard. I think he's going to come good this season. I'm not sure why, but looking at looking at some of the goals he scored, yeah, I think the Mariners will come good this season.
Very good. All right, I'm up next with the Bulls after talking up Arzani and how near and dear he is to me. I'm going to be talking, I guess, about the Bulls now. So Dwight Yorke, he's the big in at the Bulls this year. Takes over from Ante Milicic after he finished 7th with the Bulls last year, and I guess that's really the biggest frustration from last season was that basically their coach announced halfway through the season that he was pretty much done with the club and had enough and was tired and was going to take his ball and go and play overseas once the season was finished, which is hardly very inspiring for the players, I can imagine. Bulls fans, I think, will be talking about whether or not Dwight Yorke can bring the bling to Campbelltown, which I think is going to be really interesting because I think Shanen mentioned earlier, I think a lot of people thought, Dwight Yorke, he was a good player, but not really expecting that he's going to be able to manage a team very well. But I actually agree. I think he's done a good job so far. This is obviously going to be a very attacking team in the same way that the Jets are or were last season. And I think that's the big question mark on everyone's lips is, can the Bulls, score goals, enough goals to be competitive with all that attacking intent, but also keep the goals out at the other end and be defensively sound as well. A couple of big ins. They've obviously signed Arzani, who I've already mentioned. Kieran Backus, he joins from the Kaiser Chiefs in South Africa, the giants of South African football. Philip Curto's also re-signed with them. That means he's staying on for another year, not that he's an out. Matt Miller has joined from St Mirren in Scotland, who replaces Lewis Miller, who went to Scotland. And also Jonathan Aspro joins his 5th A-League club at 26 years old, which is wild.
It's a new James Donachie.
Yeah, I know, right? Or Anthony Golek, who ironically the Bulls just released.
The real estate agent himself.
Yeah. The other big in is Bashana Raboli, who's the 28-year-old Georgian international. I think maybe he's played once for Georgia. At his last club, he scored 8 goals in 44 appearances, so not even sure if he will actually start ahead of Alassane Toure, but I guess he's a decent sort of depth option if he isn't a guaranteed starter for the Bulls. Couple of decent outs, Alexander Jovanovic, Jordan Much, Tommie Juric, Apostolos Giannou, Tommie all retired, and Adrian Mariappa left as well at the end of his contract. So some pretty decent ins, but some pretty solid outs as well. I think fans will be excited about Alassane Toure combining with Danny Da Silva, Arzani, Davila, and Craig Noon, which is a very dynamic, exciting front four. But I think they'll be very nervous about, like I said earlier, about whether the razzle-dazzle and goals will be greater than a defence made up of Matt Miller, Sushnia, Aspro, and Vujica. My one to watch, you can probably imagine, is Daniel Alzani. And some people have sort of joked about whether or not he'd be a World Cup bolter if he hits some early season form. Successful season for the Bulls is going to be finals, but I'm predicting they're going to miss out, and I think they're going to finish 9th, which probably indicates that I don't think the defense is going to do as well as the attack is going to this year. Most importantly, though, the kit. The Bulls have moved away from Macron this year and have gone with Kelme, the Spanish football brand. The away kit is a bit meh, but I think the Bulls have actually nailed their home kit. I mean, they've got one of the best colour palettes in the league, in black, white, and gold, and some of their kits the last 2 seasons have been sort of close, but essentially near misses. Whereas this year, I think the tricolour stripes that they've done are really, really nice. I don't know. For the last couple of years, I've sort of been saying to people how good I think sort of like Gremio and São Paulo and Fluminense's kits are in South America that do that sort of 3-coloured stripe, vertical stripes. And I'm really glad to see that style of design finally make it into the A-League after 20 years. I'm giving it 8 cowbells out of 10. People at the Bulls home games. And that's the Bulls. So next up is going to be Mikey with Melbourne City.
Yeah, look, Melbourne City, we've brought in quite a few good signings, and I think they're probably the quality signings we've been missing since we've had like Adrian Luna and Craig Noon. I think they may be that kind of X factor that we've been missing for a while. We were premiers last season. We've, in theory, improved the squad there, but I don't know. I don't know how we're going to go this season. Like, if you talk to any City fan about how we performed last season, they'll all probably say the same thing. They'll say the phrase, no plan B. And that is something that we've really struggled with. I think that stat that went around towards the end of the season about City playing against the top 6 and not really getting any points away from that, I think teams have started to figure us out a little bit, and it'll be really sort of interesting to see how we deal with that this season. PK's talked about changing up the system a little bit. I'm not sure what that is. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means do plan A better. But we've seen a little bit of stuff in the pre-season that shows he's at least kind of thinking about changing stuff up a little bit. I think we're going to see a bit more of Marco Tilio this season. Nice. We've seen in the preseason he's been starting and Andy's kind of dropped in as a shadow striker. But yeah, it'll all come down to whether we can adapt kind of tactically, because there were so many games last season where once we were down, there was no getting back. There was you could tell, sitting in the stands, you could tell we're not getting back into this game. We've lost. And we kept doing the same thing. The grand final, crossing it to the tallest defender in the league and hoping something will happen. Like it was silly.
It was naive.
Very naive. I think a successful season is if we go back to back to back, but that will require our new signings. We've got Valon Berisha, as I mentioned, my boy. We've got Richard van der Ven from the Netherlands. And we've got Thomas Land from Finland. And I think all 3 of those guys, they're going to go superbly. But we've also picked up from our academy up in Sydney, Callum Talbot. And he's been starting for an injured Galloway, but I think he may be our starting right back come the season. So it'll be interesting to see how we shape up. We've lost Connor Metcalf, that we already knew that. We've lost Stefan Kolakovsky to Perth. We've lost Roston Griffiths to Mumbai, and we finally freed Manuel Pucciarelli from our prison over at Casey Fields. So we've had a little bit of an overhaul, but I really think our new signings will kind of inject some life into this team. And I think an injection of some life is really what this team needs. Onto the kits. We've our home kit, I think, is close to as perfect as you can get for that type of kit. The only thing I'd change is I'd maybe put some white on the collar. The away kit, I think, is probably the best kit City Heart have ever had. Ooh. The red and white number. No, so Shanen does not agree. And the And our third kit, I'm not quite sure what it is. It's like a fluoro Moroni mismatched Queensland State of Origin kit. I'm not sure. But yeah, look, I think if we get our stuff sorted, I think we should aim to finish top of the league and go for the double. But yeah, there's a lot of things that need to fall into place for that to be even likely, I'd say.
Before we move on, I do want to just add that for all those people saying that Thomas Lamb is Finnish, he's 28. He's got lots of football ahead of him. Okay, so thanks, Mikey. Next up is Damo with City's massive rivals Victory.
Yeah, look, I said before that I think Victory were going to finish top of the league, do one better than last year where they finished second. Look, last year was a pretty incredible campaign from Victory considering the year that was before. It's been spoken about at length, but I think the biggest thing was, in classic Tony Popovich fashion, he came in and took a side that conceded 60 goals the year they finished bottom of the league to conceding just 25 goals last season, which was the best in the league by a fair way. So that's an enormous improvement on the year before. And it was the foundation of their season last year, and obviously winning the Australia Cup. They conceded very few goals, and to be fair, they didn't score that many, but they didn't need to, and that's very classic Tony Popovich. So I think they filled a couple of gaps this year. Obviously, Rojas has gone to Colo Colo, which is a big loss for them, but they've replaced replaced Rojas with Nani. I'll speak about him in a minute as to whether or not I think that's a good like-for-like replacement. I think another loss is Jason Davidson. I don't think they've properly replaced him. I think he's a huge part of that back four that was so good. They've signed Noah Smith from Central Coast, who looks like a great young. I think he's only 20 years old, maybe 21. He looks like he could turn out to be a very good player, but he's not of Jason Davidson's level. He's not knocking on the door of the national team. So, and Jason Davidson had a particularly good season last year. So that's probably going to be the biggest worry for Melbourne Victory is have they replaced Rojas and Davidson? I think outside of that, there hasn't really been much change at all at the club there. They brought in Paul Izzo for Ivan Kellever. I think Izzo's a better goalkeeper, to be honest. They've also brought in Tommie Juric as sort of another option up front, which I think just gives them that, that plan B that we're talking about that Melbourne City or some other clubs don't really have is Tony Popovich has got that in his locker to play different styles of football, depending on the occasions. I've got here that Victory fans, what they're going to be talking about this season, and what they love to talk about is themselves. They'll talk about the Victory fans all year. So they always talk about their crowds and their support, and and rightly so. That they are the biggest club in the league in terms of their crowds and their fans, and they do like to tell people about it. And now they've got Nani in the team. There should be a chance at winning multiple trophies this year. COVID feels like it's in the past. You can really only expect Amy Park to sort of be at its full and rocking best at Melbourne Victory home games. So I think anything less than Victory having those sort of big crowds return and those boisterous fans return is probably not a successful season for them. I think that's sort of the expectation. But yeah, they'll definitely let the rest of the league know about it as soon as those people come back. I think what they're going to be nervous about is have they done enough to close the gap to City, which there was last year. And I think it's less a case of have Victory close the gap to City than have City been able to keep that distance between the two of them. So I think what Tony Popovich has done is he's brought in some players that give them options to play different types of football and in different ways. And that's very classic Tony Popovich. He just adapts in real time and just gets the job done. apart from winning grand finals, which he's never done, but and they won't do this year. I've tipped them; they'll win the league, but not the grand final. But yeah, I mentioned before that Nani was a replacement for Rojas. Obviously, he's a huge name. He's probably the biggest name in the league this year in terms of a marketing standpoint, and there's going to be a lot of money put behind him. And Melbourne Victory have, in really clever strategy, have created a Nani range of clothing, which I think I was talking to you, Tommie, about it. It's really clever because Nani probably gets a cut of these clothing sales that doesn't include into his marquee salary. He just gets X percentage of sales. It also incentivizes him to post about his clothing range on his social media, which talks about his football club that goes around the world with his, hundreds of millions of followers. So I think it's a great idea. And I think Nani's a great idea for that kind of stuff, but I actually don't think he is a like for like replacement for Rojas. I don't think he's got the same sort of work ethic as Rojas does, tracking back. Nani, I think people have sort of got this vision in his mind that he's going to come in and score a lot of goals. He's not a very prolific goal scorer. If anything, he works more in sort of providing assists for other players. So we might see a bit of that. But Nani, as a younger player, everyone remembers him from Manchester United, where all he wanted to do was play on the left, cut in on the right, and take shots at goal. He's actually turned into a very different player as he's got older, and he likes to beat the defender to the line. He likes to get crosses back in the box, and I don't know if that's how Melbourne Victory are going to score a lot of goals. So I don't see how successful Nani is going to be in that sort of setup, but you never know. Like I said, Popovic has got many ways to play football, and I'm sure he's got many plans for Nani, but I don't see him being an enormous success on the field, but I do see him being a big success off the field. So, he can give and take a little bit, but it's a good signing in the grand scheme of things. What's a successful season? I think Victory have got to win trophies. They've got to get their fans back in the ground. That's the expectation of that club every year. They won a trophy last year. I think they need to win another trophy this year, whether that's the Premiership or the Grand Final. They've got to win one of them to be a successful season. I think they'll win the Premiership. I don't think they'll even make the Grand Final. I think that's sort of that they won't make it that far. But they'll obviously try to. Like I said, I've predicted them to finish first, and now we'll get on to the most important part, which is the kit fiasco that has been at Melbourne Victory. They had no kit ready for the season launch, which is supposed to be where everyone displays their kit. So they just didn't have it ready. They wore their training kit. Only for everyone to think their kit was being leaked by FIFA 13 to FIFA 23 2 days later.
That'd be something, wouldn't it?
FIFA 13, yeah. And it wasn't the right kit that was in FIFA, so it was a fake leaked kit. And then just earlier today, it was leaked via Getty Images, who just posted it on their website, and someone managed to find it that their kit has been released, and which actually forced Melbourne Victory to post an article on their website that they have announced a new sponsor with Bonza Airlines. So it's pretty clear that is their actual kit. Who knows when they're going to announce it, and we expect the away kit to be the highlighter yellow, that Victory fans seem to think they created. To be honest, it's a pretty unimaginative big V design kit. They're pretty stock standard Victory kits, and I give it a 3 shit Australian slangs out of 10.
She'll be right.
Can you even call it the V or chevron jersey if you can barely make it out? Because this is actually, I don't want to call it revolutionary, but it kind of does go against the grain for a Victory home kit. They've tried very hard to almost not put the V in there while still having the V.
Well, they have to have the V there. They're the big V. That's what they've always had. But it's you're right. They've tried their hardest to not put it there while telling everyone it's there.
I think this is the challenge for any team or any kit maker when you've got a team that basically has a very, very clearly defined kit design. Like, I mean, you're seeing with
It's like
Juventus,
being a
for
new
example.
kit manufacturer taking over at Celtic. You've got one option.
Yeah,
You've
exactly.
got thick hoops, and that's it.
Well, like even Juventus, they did like half and half, and like that's pretty much all that they could do. I mean,
or Real Madrid, it's just a plain white kit every year, regardless of who makes it.
Sometimes it's got a purple stripe on it though. So,
yeah, I know what you mean. And there's a couple of clubs in the league that have sort of typecasted their kits now, and I think Wanderers is one that they're going to get the same thing every year, and Victory has been the same thing for the better part of 15 years now. It's a navy kit with a some sort of big white V on the chest, and you can figure it out around that.
I just hope Wanderers don't do a Barcelona and decide for 1 year they're going to do
the 4 panels.
Stripes. Gross. All right. Well, let's keep moving, shall we? Colby's going to preview the Jets next. And now, Damo, it's back to you, I think. You've got the Glory.
Back to me.
Perth Glory.
Yep. I spoke about Glory's stadium situation at the top of the pod, and I think that's going to be a huge impact on their season. They've had a couple of very disrupted seasons with lockdowns and not being able to get in and out of WA and having to play out of a different state at times. Manager sackings, the Sturridge experiment failed, and I think the worst part of everything was actually the way they played football was just horrible to watch. So, a lot going wrong at Perth Glory, and I think I read a really good summary that said if you wanted to do a case study on how a football club can crumble, just look at Perth Glory. It was only about 5 years ago that they were knocking on the door of winning the league, and now they're arguably one of the worst A-League sides we've seen in a long time. So a lot of things have gone wrong that have been out of their control, but a lot of things they just have done really poorly. Ruben Zadkovic is now in charge. He was obviously a fan favorite as a player, but I don't really know what his qualifications as a manager is. I know he was managing the youth team there for a while, and he's been I think he was at a youth team at a different A-League club. I can't remember which one it was, but it's good. It'll be good to see at Sydney. It'll be good to see him sort of step into that role and see if he's the same hothead he always was, and see if he's changed at all. But I think the biggest thing for Perth is that they've pretty much got a brand new team, right? Sorry
to interrupt, Damo, but I want to go on record and say that Ruben Zadkovic is my anti-boy because I reckon he is just the biggest flog. I
loved him.
I cannot stand him.
Really?
He's probably got to be like the one player that I just cannot stand the sight of in the history of the league. I don't know why. It could be because like I saw him one night at a Wollongong nightclub when I was still living there, or I don't know what it was, but just the dude I don't know. He gives me a rage. I don't know. But anyway, I wanted to go on record about that.
Yeah, fair enough.
I want to see him sacked first up.
Oof. Okay. I mean, it's not unlikely given they could have a horrible start to the season. Like I just said, they've pretty much got a brand new team. They've got a whole bunch of players who've got various experience in Europe. There's people from lower leagues in England. There's people from Switzerland. There's people from all other leagues around. I think some of the biggest ins they've got Kolikovsky obviously came in from City. Musti Amini has come in. David Williams, albeit he's, I think, 33 or 34 now, maybe even older. He's had a great career in India. He's coming back to Australia. The other big in is Zach Duncan, my boy that I spoke of earlier. I think he's only 22 years old, and I feel like he's the one to watch for me this year for Glory. He had less than half a dozen games at Brisbane about 3 or 4 years ago, and he signed for a Danish club on a 4-year deal, and he's actually on loan at the Perth Glory this year. And I think it's going to be a bit of a breakout season for him, and he'll play a similar role that Brandon O'Neill has tried to play at Glory for the last year rather, before he left after saying he needed to go home for family reasons. Now he wants to leave for family reasons. So who knows what's going on there. Obviously, he's one of their big outs then they've got Sturridge out, Keogh retired, Aussie Malik's gone, Josh Rawlins is a big out after having a promising season last year. So, yeah, I mean, they've pretty much got a brand new team. And, you know, I think if you're a Glory fan, you'd be pretty nervous that it could be another very unstable season. They haven't had, like Mikey said earlier, if you're a Perth Glory fan, you've probably been to one home game in the last 3 years. So they haven't really had a home base for supporters to get behind the club. And this season feels like it's going to be exactly the same. You know, they're playing 10 of their 13 games at a makeshift ground that you're not even allowed to have a season ticket to. So it's all just, you know, the writing is on the wall for another horrible Perth Glory season. And to be honest, I think a successful season for Glory is just a little bit of improvement. And I think Ruben Zadkovic will be given the whole season because there's no expectations. I don't think he will be sacked just because I don't think you can get any worse than they have unless they really shit the bed and play horribly and get no points. But, you know, and as horrible as it is, a successful season for them is more points, it's fewer goals conceded, and it's more goals scored, and that's literally about it. You know, I guess one good thing they've done this year is I think they've got some nice looking kits, in my opinion. I love the Perth Glory home kit. It feels a little bit like a Bournemouth kit to me from the Premier League, with sort of the odd looking stripes, but it's more of an 8-bit style orange stripe that they've got going on.
What it reminds me of is the Inter Snakeskin kit from, I think it was last season.
Yeah.
Or I think Juve did something a bit similar as well. It's one of those two that, like, both of them kind of remind me of a little bit.
Yeah, and they've walked away from I think BHP was on their shirt for the last few years, which is a WA company, and they've gone to a classic investment company that's based out of the East Coast. So I'm sure the West Australians will love that, their shirt sponsor. But their away kit as well is also really good. It's just it's a white kit with a little bit of sort of wave looking grey to it. I think both you know can't really put a foot wrong on them. So I'll give them about an 8.5 investment companies out of 10.
So Damo, before we move on, I thought Evolution Capital, I wonder if like they're based in sort of some like suburb just out of like someone's garage in Perth. And so I Googled them quickly while you were chatting. And the first Google result was Evolution Capital, and it said website still in design, which I thought was just totally perfect. And as it turns out, I think they're based out of Sydney rather than Perth. So I think they've only got one office. It says Suite 6.01. So I think it could be just a single desk.
I also did a bit of research into this. They are an investment capital company that specializes in mining. So they've ticked the box for Perth Glory. you like mining? You can be on our shirt.
Whether that's physical or digital mining, we don't care. Just get on the shirt.
Well, so next up is going to be Shanen finally doing a team preview. Waited until almost the end of the pod, but next up, you're previewing Sydney FC.
Yeah, I picked Sydney FC and Western Sydney Wanderers when you guys were kind of asking who to pick, because I knew they would be really difficult to cover, and I knew that I could kind of get off the hook, you know, with Sydney FC, because it's kind of like, it's hard to talk about them, but it's kind of easy, because I feel personally over the last couple of seasons, while they've had a good squad and their results haven't been super horrible, even when they were winning the league, except for like last season, they've just not looked good for a while, in my opinion. And I don't know whether or not that's because of Steve Corico or just because of the aging players, but I think this season is the season we're going to find out. I think what Sydney FC fans are going to be talking about this season is rejuvenation. Whether that's the lack of rejuvenation with the squad, because let's be honest, should have happened 3 or 4 seasons ago, or the rejuvenation that's going to happen with bringing all these, talented NPL youngsters in. So yeah, Sydney FC, they've had a couple of big ins and big outs on paper. I think the biggest in I put down was Luke Braddon, who, in my opinion, is like a new signing because last
Yes.
season they really missed him. He was out with I think ACL injury, but they got a couple of big ins on paper. They got Robbie Mack, who he looks amazing so far in preseason. He looks like he could be an absolute baller. They got Joe Lolly, who I spoke to a few, sort of journalists around the championship, and they tell me he can be the best player in the league if he stays fit. And, they've got a couple of little ones that we kind of thought were going to kick on, like Alex Parsons and all that sort of thing. As for outs, I don't think they've really lost anyone massive. Like, you look at you look on paper and you think, okay, they've lost Ninkovic, they've lost Barbarouses, but I don't think Sydney have been able to get the best out of Milos Ninkovic for a couple of seasons. I don't think they ever got the best out of Costa Barbarouses. So my biggest out has to be, the best player in the league last season, marquee player Liam McGing. I don't know how on earth they're going to replace him. Really big boots to fill. I think also another one I almost forgot. Jack Rodwell coming from Sydney FC, coming from Western Sydney Wanderers, he's actually signed on as a centre back, and to me that's just a really weird signing because I can understand if they sign him on as a midfielder and they go, okay, we've lost Ninkovic, we want to maybe push Caceres up as a 10 or something like that and play Rodwell, in his preferred position where he does really well. He's played in the Premier League. But he signed on. He said he's wanted to be a centre back. He said the same thing when he was at Sunderland. He said he could be England's starting centre back. I don't know if you boys remember.
Well, to be fair,
And-
Rodwell, his whole career said he wanted to be a centre half. He's always said that he was a defender and was pushed into midfield. And for the better part of the last maybe 6 or 7 years, he's played as a defender. So, well, I guess we'll see whether he actually plays at the back or not this year. It feels like he'll play as a 6.
I think personally, like, he's going to be a good defender, but it's like hiring Marco Pierre White for your restaurant and chucking him on dishes. Sure, he'll do a decent job, but you're missing out on all his best attributes if you're chucking him on dishes.
Can we just chop that clip and put it on Twitter as like the quote of the year?
New pin tweet for the pod. I just love the image of him on the dishes. Cigarette in the mouth.
I think what Sydney fans should be excited about is, I mentioned it briefly, they're talented youngsters. They've got a lot of talented young players. Adrian Segacic, everyone knows about him. They've got some good defenders. They've got all these young guys coming through. Even someone like Patrick Wood, who I believe Steve Corica might actually trust this season. So I feel like for Sydney, that's the big excitement. The fact that they've got all these young players and it looks so far like they might actually finally get a shot. But I also feel like they'll be nervous about the fact that, Sydney has had so many good young players over the past couple of seasons and they've never really given them a shot. So it's kind of the same thing, what they should be excited and nervous about. And just on that, I think the one to watch is Jaden Kucharski. I don't think I'm pronouncing his name properly, but he absolutely tore up NPL New South Wales. I think he got player of the season there. He's a good young player, with Sydney FC, that probably doesn't mean much. And for Sydney, I think, I'm staying on this point, it's the theme for Sydney. I think a successful season for them is actually starting to build for the future for once, because I don't feel like they have. And just on their kits, I'm wearing a Sydney kit for my preview. Sydney kits are usually pretty nice, but this season, man, they shit the bed big time, in my opinion. It's kind of, I think you, Mikey, it might have been you and A-League Memes who tweeted it out, that it looks like Sydney just went to their kit supplier. They were given a whole bunch of samples on different kit patterns, and they just said yes.
Yeah.
And they just chucked it all there.
Put it on, yeah.
It looked convoluted.
You needed to pick one of those, not just, it wasn't a yes-no question.
Yeah. It just looks a mess. There's too much going on,
It's meant to be
All
the
the
opera house
patterns
or something.
clash. It
I
just
don't
looks
know.
ugly in my opinion. I know a lot of people have sort of defended it, so I'm giving it about a 3 out of 10. I think Sydney FC kits, they're very simple. You can do a lot of good with them, and they've just somehow made it the worst kit in the league.
I reckon 3's
3 out of
generous,
10.
mate.
3 out of 10 illegal casinos.
3
I
out of
think-
10 money launderers.
Yeah, just quickly on Sydney FC, Shanen, you were talking about a couple of players that they've brought through from the NPL side, which I think Sydney FC's NPL side is the only one in New South Wales that plays in the top in NPL 1 in New South Wales. So that's why they keep churning out these players. And one of the other guys that absolutely starred for them in NPL last year, who's been promoted, is Corey Holman, who's Jake Holman's little brother. Jake Holman obviously came through at Sydney, and he was my boy. He was the captain of the Joeys and didn't really fill up to his potential. And now he's at MacArthur, and he's played a half a dozen decent games. But apparently his little brother's a better player than him, and he's just been promoted to the first team at Sydney FC. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets some game time too. He is he's also a midfielder. I think he plays more of a box to box role than as a 10. So he could get some time this year, given how thin Sydney FC's midfield looks.
Very good. Thanks, Shannon. Next up is going to be me with the Knicks. With no Jesse this season, he's no Jesse today at least. He's been gallivanting around Europe, just living his best life. Out after he set himself out to pasture. So I'm going to be talking about the Knicks. I'm an honorary Kiwi for the night. Biggest frustration from last year was, again, being locked out of New Zealand for big chunks of the season. And then I guess it was a really streaky, inconsistent team. They started the season really poorly, 5 straight losses, and then they sort of turned a bit of a corner and then hit 5 straight wins in a run of, I think it was 9 games without defeat. And then again, a bit of an inconsistent run home. So really just a chaotic season. Ultimately, they played pretty decent football in big patches. Shannon's just had a costume change for those in the pod. Last year, the Knicks, though, they were a little bit frustrating, I guess, for Knicks fans in that they struggled for goals a little bit. And in Ben Waine and Joshua, both players could only get about 8 goals each, which, is just not enough if you want to be competing for finals. Knicks fans, I think, are going to be talking about their first normal season post-COVID. Hopefully they'll be able to play all of their home games in New Zealand this time around. I think they'll be excited about the fact that Ufuk Talay has hung around again. He's consistently showed that he's able to get good results with a limited squad against the odds, kind of similar to the Mariners over the last 2 years. And I think Knicks fans as well I think they're gonna get really behind Bozidar Kraev, the new Bulgarian signing. So the Knicks have moved away from signing Mexican number 10s, and instead they've gone for a fallen Bulgarian star. So this guy was once considered the most promising young Bulgarian footballer in the 14-15 season. He played a couple of seasons for Bulgarian giants Levski Sofia. Yes, that same Levski Sofia who I took to the UEFA Cup in Football Manager. He got 80 appearances in 3 seasons, scoring 21 goals, which is a pretty decent return.
Was he a part of your Levski side in Football Manager?
He'd already left by the time
that's sad.
I started the save. But he subsequently had stints in Denmark and Portugal, but kind of just lost his way a little bit after he went to Denmark for about €500,000. The guy's still only 25, and I suspect this might be a little bit of a Thomas Broich-esque story where a guy who had heaps of talent and maybe just sort of fell out of love with football and thought, you know what, maybe a change of scenery, maybe moving to the other side of the world, look for something that might be just more than just football, a bit of a move to do with quality of life, and maybe we might see a really, really great footballer on our hands, something that could be really special for the Knicks and maybe for the league as well.
When are the Knicks going to sign Winston Reid? Announce Winston Reid.
Is he? I thought he. Oh no, sorry. I thought he'd retired, but he'd only retired from international football. So
Yeah, he's only
um,
34 years old as well.
are
I thought
you
he was
saying
like
he's not?
38,
Are you
39.
saying? Are you saying he's not finished?
He's not finished.
He's from New Zealand.
Although when I was watching the Australia versus New Zealand game, where it was his retirement game, they were saying that he has settled. I think his partner is Swedish or something, and they've got a family. And he says that his home is much more Scandinavia than New Zealand. So because they were actually talking about whether or not he should sign for Wellington on commentary, and that was the conclusion, is that his family is Scandinavian and they don't think he's going to move. But wouldn't that be great to see? He's finished, yeah.
I think from memory, and this is a funny little coincidence, but so Winston Reid was in Denmark when he got signed by West Ham, and as it turns out, both he and that Bulgarian guy Kraev both played for Midtjylland, the team that Ewell Mobile was at as well. So
There you go.
a funny little coincidence there. But look, few pretty decent ins for the Knicks. They signed Ugarkovic from, I think he was at Western Sydney. Costa Barbarouses, he's come home back to New Zealand. Moragas is in, I think, on loan. Obviously, Kraev, who I've already talked about. Jan Sass, who's got one of, I think, the best names in the league. He's joined on loan from America Mineiro. And then Oscar Zawada, Polish youth international, who hasn't done much anywhere that he's been in his career to date. He also joins. A couple of big outs as well, unfortunately, though, for the Knicks. Rene Piscopo joins the Jets. Jael Sandoval, he's gone back to Mexico, to Guadalajara. Gary Hooper, I think, retired. And Joshua Soterio, he also joined the Jets along with James McGarry too. So some pretty decent players there that have moved on to other things. And hopefully those new players will be able to replace them. Fans, I think, are going to be really excited about Kraev and Jan Sass, two talented foreigners who could spark creativity in their midfield. But likewise, I think fans will be nervous about if those two talented foreigners don't actually provide the team with any creativity and kind of flop a little bit. Because if those two players don't do well, I think this Knicks team is going to struggle to create anything, because they've always had a bit of a workman-like midfield central two. One to watch, like I said, Kraev, he's my boy this year. I think this is going to be a great story. I think he's potentially another Thomas Broich. Whether or not he hits the same heights or not, really is up to the Knicks as well, because obviously Broich was part of a great team. But I think, successful for the Knicks is just going to be them making finals again. It's not a hugely deep squad, so any big injuries or long injuries to basically their first 11 is going to be really, really difficult for them. I'm predicting that they're going to finish 8th though, and ultimately miss finals. I think they're going to be credible and competitive though. More importantly though, the kit. You guessed it. Yep. Black stripes on a yellow background. But they, interestingly enough, look, this kit doesn't exactly jump out at you immediately because, it is black and yellow. But they've, the Knicks commissioned a local artist to assist with the design. And there's some really subtle details on the kit that probably you're only going to spot either if you're looking at the graphic or if you're looking at the kit in the flesh. The details are really, really great. They enhance the link between the local area and the team, and also there's a cute little motif underneath the sponsor, which is basically sort of the unfurling of a plume of ferns. I believe it's an important motif in that part of New Zealand, and it has a Maori noun, but I'm not going to butcher it by saying it. The away kit it's got some of those same details as well from the commissioned artist, but ultimately I just think it's not quite as nice. It's a dark navy or charcoal grey. It's a little bit hard to tell, and I just don't think it's as nice a kit. But look, I'm giving the home kit 9 unfurling ferns out of 10. All right, next up is going to be, I think we're back with Shanen this time. He's just got changed just in time. Now he's wearing a Wanderers kit. So Shanen, take it away, mate.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you what, off season in the A-League makes me really feel bad for Wanderers fans because you
I never
finish the
feel bad for
season,
Wanderers fans.
they have a shit season, right, lately. They finish the season, they're all depressed, and then slowly they'll sign a couple of good players and there'll be like some real good documentary and some good stuff on the socials, and the fans will start to get excited, and things will look like, man, we're going to get back to the glory days. This is going to be the year for Wanderers fans. And then slowly, that hope just dwindles over the season and things just fall apart. And I think last season was very much a case of that. Damo said, I think, what was it, Dimi Petrados, Johnny Warren, or something like that. And to be honest, last season on paper, Wanderers had one of the best squads in the league. I don't think anyone would disagree on paper that they signed really well and things looked pretty good. Carl Robinson was meant to be this big shot manager, and it was one of the most miserable seasons I think I've ever seen. And the Wanderers fans were all depressed and all that stuff. And this season, they signed good players again. They've put out little documentaries with the kits, and RBB are celebrating their 10th year. And in the preseason, they had a meet up and it looked amazing. And I feel so sorry for them because they're getting their hope up again. So, yeah, I think that's my biggest takeaway so far from this preseason. They've had a lot of big ins and big outs. Obviously, Milos Ninkovic is a big one, more because bragging rights. I still think he's a fantastic footballer, but the stuff he's done for the club so far, the hype he's built about, all the negative press he's said about Sydney, and he said he's shown more love in 6 months at Wanderers than he was in 6 years at Sydney, or whatever the quote was. You just got to love it because it's starting to build back that rivalry. They've also got Lawrence Thomas, who's, a fantastic goalkeeper, borderline Socceroo at times. And they've got one who I'm a big fan of, Roman can't pronounce it, Amat Filtliano. Sorry to any French speakers out there. So, yeah, on paper, it's another season where they've kind of recruited very well, but I think they've had a couple of really big losses, and I don't think there's any loss that's been as big in the Wanderers' history. I know this is a big claim, as losing Keanu Bacchus. He's a local boy, lives and breathes the club. When the club was having their lowest sort of periods, he was kind of not their star player, but their guy who would always put in the performances, would always meet with the fans, all this stuff. And he was everything the Wanderers, represented as a club. So to lose him, I don't think Wanderers have really ever lost a player as big as him in their history. Maybe Topor Stanley. I think for Wanderers fans, what they can be excited about is, I know football's not played on paper, but they've recruited very, very well, it seems. They've also recruited some good youngsters. They've got some good youngsters they've actually nabbed from Sydney FC's youth team. And the club it looks like the unit is really, close together. It looks like they're actually starting to believe in what Mark Rudan's trying to do as a football club. But I think there's a lot of worries too. I think they should be nervous about the fact that they're Wanderers fans and they know they know what happens with this club. And also they should be nervous about, I just put in the notes redacted, a certain legal thing, which I think if you know, sort of thing, and I won't elaborate on it anymore. One to watch for me is Cassini Yengi. I know he's a bit of a meme player. People give him shit because he does his dances and he likes to get on the skin of players, but and fans, sorry, but he's tall, he's strong, he's fast, he's got a good natural instinct for finishing. And if you can stay fit, get a bit of confidence, bit of form, I think he can be a 10 plus goal a season striker. I also think, based on meeting him, Marcelo, their captain, he has the potential to be a very good signing. He's fucking massive. He's the biggest guy I've ever seen. He's got good experience, but he is a bit old and slow. So
Is
I
he
think
going to
the
fart in the
Wanderers
dressing room again, or?
Yeah.
Oh god, that's one of the most wild stories I've heard about football.
It's just bizarre, isn't it? So
Yeah,
for
there's
those who
some
didn't
stories
catch
that
this,
come out, and
keep going, mate.
but yeah, for Wanderers, I think a successful season would be really bringing back those fans. When the Wanderers first got in the league, it was all about the fans. You go to Perth Stadium as a neutral or someone, and you could be, what's the word? You could be turned into a Wanderers fan. It could make you fall in love with football going to that stadium. And I think opposition teams really struggled there because of the atmosphere they created. And for a number of reasons, COVID, changing stadiums, this and that, they really lost a lot of the fans and have lost a lot of the identity. And I think the RBB is essentially an extra player for the Wanderers. So a successful season for me, they could finish 12th as long as they get those fans back. It's a success in my book. Their kits look,
There we go.
they always look good. The red and black, you can't really muck that up. I think they've tried to be a little bit creative. I think someone joked about, Celtic and Wanderers kits. You can't really do much. And I tried to be a little bit creative with the swishes and all this stuff. I think it was like a paintbrush look. It's decent. 8.5 I go for it. The away kits, nothing special, but they're not ugly. So I think overall, they've done an okay job.
Fair enough. Did you give it an 8.5 for an okay job?
Well, Wanderers kit's an okay job. It's a beautiful kit. Let's be real.
Actually, the team who
All
I'm
right,
about
don't
to
worry.
preview.
I was going to say, Wanderers will have a third and fourth kit out soon anyway to buy at JD Sports as a fashion label. So you could wait for them.
Oh dear. All right. On the subject of stripy kits, next up is the Woo. Last but not least, obviously finished third, but did win the grand final. So great season for John Eloise's boys. Biggest frustration last year is despite winning the grand final, they had all the opportunities to actually go one better or two better in the regular season. With Victoria and City both inconsistent towards the end of the season, they just couldn't find the consistency themselves to basically take or grab the Premier's plate by the scruff of the neck. And like I said, they ended up finishing third, which I think would have been a little bit frustrating because obviously they were very good in that semi-final, that second leg against the VUC. But what a season it could have been if they actually took out both trophies and won the double. I think Woo fans will be talking about this season, their captain, Diamante, and when he inevitably gets injured again, I think they'll be talking about whether or not they can switch back to last season's very, very effective counter-attacking style. I think they'll also be questioning whether or not James Troisi is really finished now after about sort of round 2 or round 3 of his poor performances.
Bold call.
Yeah, the real bald fraud. He blocked me on Twitter years ago for telling him to get the bic out.
and he still did it though. So I mean,
but
he should be thanking you. Should be thanking you. Big ins, like I said, James Troisi. He's a big name these days, but I'm not sure whether or not he's still still a great player in the A-League. Obviously, once was. Jacob Tratt has joined from Perth, I think. Tongo Duombia is a 33-year-old Malian pro footballer, last played in Kazakhstan. Not sure how he's going to go. I hope that he's just squad depth for the team, but he may end up replacing Rene Kieran, who obviously had quite a decent pedigree. I think he played into Milan for a little while. Not sure he's the same pedigree though. Has played mostly some mid-tier or lower tier League One teams in France. So yeah, he's played at a decent level, but never for any particularly good teams. Fans, I think we will be excited about just enjoying being A-League champions for a season. You got the gold A-League logo, it just says to everyone that you're the A-League champions, and it doesn't matter what happens with the Woo this season, they'll always be A-League champions until the end of the season, which is great for them and great for the fans to be able to just soak that up. They'll be nervous about struggling and possibly missing finals because obviously with being the A-League champions and wearing that gold A-League crest means that every team is out to just kick you off the park and just smash you score-wise as well. So I think they're going to have a real mark on them themselves this year, and I think a lot of teams will look at them and say, I think we can beat this team. My one to watch, who's probably been one to watch for a couple of years now, not just by me, but a lot of people, is Noah Bodic. I think he didn't really play very much last year, but I do wonder if this could be a bit of a breakout season with him. But obviously he's got Prijovic and Wenzel Hall in front of him, so it will be tricky for him, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Successful season for me for the Woo is just making finals again, because like I said, it's going to be challenging. Lots of people are going to have a target on the Woos back this year, but I'm predicting that they're going to be playing finals, but only just. I'm predicting they're going to finish 6th.
Wow.
Most importantly, though, the kit. We were talking about stripy boys just before, and yep, you guessed it, home kit, black stripes on green. This time there's it's been a little bit of zhuzhing happening. It's got like a bit of a dot pattern, just like I think Juve have got this year. So it's you can see they're trying to not just go down sort of the block stripes that they've had in the last couple of seasons. So some interesting details there, and so not quite as nice as the Perth kit, but you can see that they've had a little bit of fun still with the stripes, and it does look like a really good kit. The away kit, it's a centralized green and black stripe merged together, and it's got a bit of a sort of a scribbly effect. Think Crystal Palace's kits this season, which, look, I like that. I think the Woo's best kits are always their away kit. I think they've done some really unique designs with that over the last couple of years, and this is another one where, look, it's a very solid kit. I've given the Woo 8. The Woo own better training facilities than the VUC already, out of 10 though. So that's really good for them, and I think they're going to look great with new kit, gold logo. It's going to be great, even if they don't end up making finals or can't quite repeat their heroics from last season. But look, it's been a whopping, it's probably 2 hours once we include Colby's content as well. Thanks for sticking with us over what is always a mega episode. We hope that you look forward to the upcoming season and you're just as excited as us. But most importantly, just get out there and enjoy the football. Until next time, ciao.
Suey.